Hi, everybody. Yeah. So we are going to talk about leadership today, and we're living in this special time. I know the word is the unprecedented time, but it's a little bit overused almost. But it is a very special time, and much is going on. Some of you are having huge responsibilities, and there's changes as leaders, whether you're leading big organizations, smaller ones, or simply your own life. This time is very special. But also there are opportunities coming out. And we want to talk what type of leadership is needed when we go through change and disruption. And we are also dealing with connecting people, and we want to empower women and enable women around the world so that we ultimately can have a place where all women and men have freedom to choose, and where we have a world that really works for all. First of all, I'd like to introduce Kanta Singh. Kanta is joining us from New Delhi today. She's currently country program manager for UNWomen in India. She has also vast experience working with a UNDP, and also very proud to have with us today Umran Beba. Umran is from Turkey, but she's calling us in today from New York. She's the Chief Global Diversity and Engagement Officer from PepsiCo. Umran has worked in various positions around the world, and her work in HR functions is always, as long as I've known her, meant that she put priority on making sure there were equal chances for women and for many other diversities. And our next speaker is also Tina Tinde, Tina from Norway, who is had long experience working with women, and also she's been working in the American Development Bank, where she was working with diversity and inclusion and numerous other organizations. She's currently based in Geneva, where she's advisor for issues such as sexual abuse for the Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent organizations. So maybe we start with Kanta today. Kanta, tell us what is going on in this time with UNWomen in India. What are you doing?
Thank you, Kristin. I'm honored to be on the panel. There's a lot that's happening. We all know about this. In India, situation is different, but not so different. We, by default, are working with the most marginalized people. That's the mandate that we have. But besides that, UNWomen works a lot on leadership. So we support the government in terms of policy. We support the government in terms of response, particularly to the women in the country, maybe women who have been going back to their native place from cities, people who started small enterprises but are not in a position to continue that because of the lockdown and because of the financial crisis. We also take up a lot of issues on advocacy, for example, on the health worker and how adversely they are impacted. Yeah. 70% of the women in the health sector are they are on the front lines. So in terms of our work, in fact, every day there's a new challenge. And we all know domestic violence has increased manifold across the globe, and that's one area of work that UNWomen specializes in and works on across the globe. So there are a number of things that we're working on, and we just started actually. Yeah. So at three levels, working with the government, working with the intermediaries, working with the private sector, and also the most marginalized women. And there are a number of things we're doing with them.
And Kanta, so what are you doing also to keep people, let's say, are calm and informed? I mean, we are talking about millions of people.
So there's a shadow pandemic, as you all know, about the domestic violence, and that is where our most efforts are, because women are in close spaces with the same people who are, causing mental, physical abuse to them. Yeah. So how do they keep calm? They can't go out. They can't call the police because then there's no way they can stay in the same household, right? So that is the area where we are putting our most efforts in right now. Yeah. So there are things that we are doing for the immediate crisis. Of course, then there are things that we will be working at midterm, not on in a long-term basis, but of course there are things that we need to do for long-term also. So medium-term, long-term, and short-term. That's how we have divided our work. And so our work is also related to creating awareness amongst women. We want women to be aware about what their rights are. If counseling services are available through government channels, or if our NGO partners are able to reach out to women and say, hey, this is a crisis, we know you are adversely impacted, but it will be over, right? Yeah. We are not giving them false hope that it will be over tomorrow. So we are there in it for a long haul, but then women have to be prepared because they are the ones who have to suffer on multiple accounts. So I don't know how calm they are, because women are also very restless. The unpaid care work is falling on them. It is increased because everybody is at home, children are at home, husbands are at home, and the entire family is at home. So they are engaged in the household work. They are facing violence. Many of them are facing violence. There's also economic crisis. Yeah. And definitely there is then paid work, women who are working on the front lines in the health sector. They have risk of catching the disease, number one. And every day we hear news that 30 nurses have got the virus, and hospitals are full of cases where women are not even given PPE, the protective gear. In fact, very recently we came to know that the protective gear didn't have menstrual hygiene products in them. Also, the differential impact that the COVID will have on women, we are also documenting that, supporting the government in communication. So number of areas that UNWomen has started following now because of the crisis.
You were saying also that you're using this occasion to, or you're making sure they know what rights they have.
Absolutely. So one is that the rights they always enjoyed, not that they were able to realize those rights, but the rights that were given to them by some by constitution and some by policies and schemes. So one is that, but also government has announced certain financial packages for women. Yeah. So we also want to make sure that women get what they're entitled to. Yeah. So that is the biggest job, that they get food, they get health care, and which is suffering, by the way. Other than COVID, other related problems, for example, what they get during pregnancy, those services are suffering now because everybody's attention is on COVID. So we are trying to tell them that this is what you are entitled to. Have you got it? Who to reach out to if you need some help. There are helplines which have been launched by government for women to reach out if there's a crisis at home in terms of violence. So our job is also to spread that information. Job loss is the major problem, loss of livelihoods and loss of jobs. We are already feeling the pinch that women will be the first ones to be taken out of jobs, right? As it is, the labor force participation of women within the economy was going down for last 10 years. Now we are feeling that it will be much worse. So women will be the last ones to be picked up by companies, because government also wants men to be picked up first. Otherwise there will be crisis, law and order problems. So women will not make that noise. So they will be the last ones to be picked up, right? And we feel that the LFR will go down further.
Thank you for sharing these concerns, and I look forward to hearing also some of the solutions I know you have in our next question. But let's move to New York. Umran, so you're sitting in a different reality, and still you are leading in a crisis. So big multinationals, tell us a little bit about what you do and how this disruption, let's say, impacts on PepsiCo globally?
So we are in the food and beverage business. Therefore, we had to continue our operations in terms of manufacturing, moving and selling our products. So we have also our frontline heroes, I should say. The total workforce is more than 260,000 people around the globe. And I would say more than 150,000 will be frontlines. They will be, going to the plants, manufacturing, moving and selling our products, visiting our customers, except of course restaurants and hotels, some channels that are not operating as much, but most of the supermarkets, etc. So that put a lot of emphasis in our business, therefore, on employee safety, operating with all the safety measures. So I think that was our first focus, and making sure that we have protocols, playbooks around. They are going out safely. If they are tested positive, how do we make sure they are still paid during that time of 2 weeks, and then also making sure they take care of others if they need to with some paid extra benefits. So our front lines received actually a very clear benefit scheme and also some incentives for being out there. We had also challenges of course, finding the PPE in the beginning, but now I think it's definitely in a better place. Another reality of our business, the office people like myself, and we are all working from home, and all of a sudden we dived into this world of basically communication, Zoom, and similar tools that we have been using. I mean, they were not totally new, but all of a sudden now everybody comes into the picture with their authentic self, and that's what we have been talking about, for many years. And now all of a sudden, I think some trends are emerging here. So working from home was a trend. I mean, again, it was a policy we approved, but maybe it was once a week. Now, all of a sudden, we see that it's working. I mean, it's possible. So when we go back to work, I think there will be a major change. That, some people who are commuting, have other, challenges at home, they can actually use this more than a day. So that's one. The other one is the authentic, as I said, bringing your authentic self to the screen. We see our colleagues with kids and, and also their pets and whatever, I mean, like, it's their normal life, and I think it's okay, because we are here to communicate and finish our work. So employee front, I mean, we are giving a lot of support to the people at home in terms of how to deal with it, especially childcare, of course, is becoming a major challenge. You are trying to juggle everything. And depending on the country, men are helping or not helping. But at the end of the day, I think what we offer in the US specifically is an additional $100 for childcare if they need. I don't know if it's possible for all of them to utilize it, because you don't want to bring some foreigner into the house, most probably, in terms of the risk. But especially if you are working in the field, at least you can use that money for childcare. So that's good. The second area of focus for us, of course, the customer care, business continuity. So we have seen the importance of supply chain and how, trends are really now changing in terms of automation, technology, but also going forward, e-commerce. There are many changing trends we are seeing and speeding up. So that will dictate the future. And the last area was communities, and our focus has been, with about $50 million investment around the globe, is about food, nutrition, because there are many kids out of school, they don't have school meals. So our objective was really to cover that gap with different organizations around the globe. I mean, also UN Foundation was one of them, I should say. And Feeding America. I mean, there are many organizations around the globe that we are working with, and we are trying to provide daily meals to the children to make sure they are safe. So that's kind of our current plan. But I would say 3 important trends I have seen from a woman's perspective. I think working from home is okay. We see a lot of authenticity coming out, and also it's appreciated. And the importance of communication from the leaders, the continuity of the communication, the transparency, and again, the informality and the authenticity. So those are the trends I'm seeing.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Umran. It's exciting to hear. It's just like Kanta said, no, we are giving information about women's rights. It's a chance. And you're saying all these things that you worked for so long to try to get authentic leadership. And here we have it. So, so there's some good things coming out of this. So I would like to hear from Tina Tinde now. How about you? You're also working in the headquarters of the International Federations of the Red Cross. What's going on? How do you handle all of this, from the good things to the more shadow side of things?
Yeah, thank you so much, Kristin and Juliana, for gathering us. I think it's really important that we network as much as we can. I am clearly struggling to feel useful at all, being in comfortable surroundings here in Geneva, in Switzerland, while we know what is happening. I just find that it's really important that we continue to smash the patriarchy. I see in the COVID response that the boys clubs use any new opportunity they have to continue and to strengthen their, let's say, gender insensitive approach. So I don't have to list to you all the gender discrimination that is happening, whether it's personal protective equipment, whether it's the lack of support for survivors of violence. So I know you're all very well informed. But we have to stick together. We have to share information and to challenge the patriarchal structures. You may find it as surprising as I do that international organizations where I have worked that have been created to uphold human rights, that they still do not have very good practices internally, that it's still men who dominate leadership positions, and that they are doing better than when I started in the UN 30 years ago, but they still use a very sort of uninformed language sometimes about, for instance, violence against women, and how they focus on the victims in their language, saying that so and so many women or children were beaten or abused. They do not focus on the actual perpetrators. So we see that as late as last week, I see articles and quotes by the UN Secretary General that has this approach. I find it extremely important for leadership that men and women who lead organizations and who lead operations, that they do not compromise on ensuring safety for people and on using a gender analysis in everything that they do. Last week I participated in a meeting with a lot of representatives from humanitarian organizations, and they shared the experience from gender aspects of the Ebola response, which happened in Congo and West Africa. 2 to 3 years ago, there was a big outbreak of Ebola, and there are huge gender aspects of that, because women have different roles in society than men. In the Ebola response, in those countries, the women have more responsibility for burials, for instance. They have more responsibilities for taking care of patients, of sick family members. And they are also more at risk when they lose their livelihoods. They may have to engage in transactional sex or sell their bodies. And that brings me to my job, which is to try to prevent my colleagues from sexually abusing the children and the women they have been sent to protect. So as you understand, this is one of the most unpopular topics that anybody can work on. The progress in this area is glacial. We do have more guidance and knowledge now than when I was in Cambodia in 1992-93, when I became a witness to both soldiers and civilians actually exploiting the people of Cambodia, and we were there in a peacekeeping operation. So there is more knowledge, but organizations are not taking this seriously enough. So I am appealing to all of you who are part of this call to see what is happening to your own NGOs, the non-governmental organizations. We have Save the Children with good practices. We have CARE. We have Red Cross, national societies, Red Crescent. We have refugee councils, and we have UNICEF and UNFPA and UNWomen. And please don't stop asking them what they're doing on this topic. It is a career breaker. I've had to change jobs a few times because I've been working so much on gender issues, and I don't keep my mouth shut. It's not popular. I do have very good support where I'm working now. I'm in the Red Cross Federation here in Geneva, and my colleagues, my managers, they're all very engaged, but this is like moving mountains. So I do hope that that there will be more leadership showing on this, which means to enforce accountability. Right now, an NGO worker or an aid worker or a soldier can get away with abusing women and children in other countries because of lack of harmonized jurisdiction. There's a complete chaos about who gets extradited where and who investigates what. So it's very easy to get away with this if you have that tendency that you want to commit such crimes against women and children, many of these people actually flock to a disaster. We saw that after the earthquake in Haiti, that there were pedophiles who would join or even set up their own aid group to get access to vulnerable children. So anyway, so I'm working on this, and I'm sorry that it's such a tough topic, but we should really work to protect the most vulnerable. And those now during the COVID response, we need to have learned from the Ebola analysis. We know that women and children are more at risk of abuse because of illness, of losing their, not going to school or losing their livelihoods. So now it's amazing that we have to start all over again, as if we did not learn from the Ebola response, and it's only a few years ago. So yeah.
So Tina, this is it's very, what can we say? It's heartbreaking, of course, and it's also, as you say, not new. And at the same time, things are really coming out, and more people are getting informed, I think, every day. And this dismantling the patriarchy, and we have to remember the patriarchy also resides in many women's mind, because we were brought up in the same culture. So this awakening, becoming aware of what's going on, is also incredibly important. And I think by sharing stories and sharing experiences, what we're doing here now is so important. Just I have one last question to you here today, which is actually on solutions. So I mean, it's tough work, whether it is to ask everybody to work from home, still work even if it could be unsafe, deal with issues like you're talking about, which is so tough, where you have everybody against you, where you're losing your job, you're risking to lose your job, and Tina said it has happened. Or things at home, you can lose your friends, you can lose your husband, there's stuff going on that's not easy. So how do we, as a last thing, and in short briefness, how do you stay resilient, and how do you find inspiration, and what's one hopeful vision you have for the future in this time? And just 2 minutes each, max. Umran.
Okay, thank you so much. I think, as I said, from the corporations perspective, as you say, some people lose jobs. Some industries like ours can continue, but at this time we were also able to offer some temporary jobs for our partners who are in the hotel business or catering business. So I think that's very important, that we are using our networks, to collaborate, first of all, and making sure that jobs, first of all, the economic, I think, still continuity is very important, because it's going to cause a lot of social issues. So that's, I think, something we have to continue looking at. From our, I think, employees' perspective, the focus on the well-being, the mental health. We have been talking about it maybe at a certain level, but I think now it's real, it's serious. Yeah. Even if they have jobs, even if they work from home, in a safe environment, or out there, in a more difficult environment, that helps. The well-being is very important, and we will see more of that, I think, in the coming times, and we should be supporting that. Yeah. From my perspective, of course, I mean, I feel very lucky, to be able to work from home in a safe environment, but still, sometimes you feel that pressure of, dealing with crisis or hearing the bad news, etc. So I hear the news as much as I need. So that's one strategy. I'm not all the time, listening and checking. I mean, just to balance that. But beyond that, I mean, I have a couple of hobbies that I'm really pulling in now. And one of them is singing, and it helps me. Music is good for my well-being, and I try to use that for my own good and for my, others around me. And I have 3 men in the house with me, my husband and 2 boys. And I want to make sure that they are participating in the home or housework. And it's good to see that, recently they have been producing, some jam and pickles, and why not? Yes, men also should participate, I think, in the housework. So yeah, I mean, we should do whatever we can in our own capacity as a person, but also as an organization. So that's what I want to say today. Thank you.
Thank you, Umran, and thank you also for sharing. What you can do personally, like you said, get engaged in something like singing, and get the guys at home to become involved. A lot of good things can happen from there. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Kanta, please share some of your resilience and inspiration strategies.
See, I always believe that every crisis brings opportunities, particularly for women who actually we had nothing much to lose. We had already lost so much. So it's not only a health crisis, it's also an economic crisis. And here, so most of the jobs that women had, say, the entire service sector, the aviation sector, the hospitality sector, women were employed there. And they are going to be impacted badly. But what is opening up now is, particularly in a country like India, is that online training and education is opening up. And women are naturally good at that. So creating content for online learning, facilitation, technicians, graphic designers, there are a lot of jobs. And also, I think the work from home culture is going to suit more women. In India, there is also a discussion about taking manufacturing at a local level. So that means more and more women can join that workforce. It is very difficult for women to leave their homes and leave their villages to come and work in a big city. But if the manufacturing goes closer to them, it will be easier for women to work in that. So these are two clear opportunities. Of course, there's a huge requirement for more women leaders. We have seen across the globe how women respond to crises like this. I don't need to elaborate on that. We all have seen that. But government needs to bring in more women into the formal workforce so that they get social security, and which has been lacking because women always come as an afterthought. Even in the response to COVID-19, we don't see India's response gender sensitive or gender responsive. Women's differential requirements and needs and aspirations have not been factored in, and that is what worries us. But beyond that, on a larger level, I think we need to invest a lot more in the health sector. 1% of our GDP is invested in health, which is not enough. Clearly, we have seen that unless you lock down the entire country, the cost of which is very heavy, particularly for women. So governments also needs to do a lot more. Of course, women need to be given immediate help now so that they can continue to work in their on their livelihoods. They need funds, they need protection, physical protection, and psychological help at this point in time. So there's a lot, but I'm seeing that there is an opportunity also for us to take leadership, to show or lead by example, and also grab jobs which were not ours before this.
This is great. Thank you for saying that, and thank you for leading in such a way, Kanta. Tina, last comments from you, standing in what you're standing in.
Yes, thank you.
Vision for the future. Last comment here.
Yeah, thank you. I wish for the future that legislation would be more gender sensitive. 75% of parliaments in the world in 75% of parliaments, parliament seats are held by men. So only 25% of parliament members are women, and that's where the laws are made. And right now, the world is in a global crisis situation. And if parliaments had better legislation, for instance, on providing support to victims of violence during a crisis, then there would have been shelters already available. The shelters cannot just pop up by themselves, even though it is happening now also. But it is much better to be prepared. So since in my organization, the IFRC, we have done studies of legislation on disaster law, which is linked to also the COVID response. And we found that there was absolutely no connection between disaster law and preventative measures on sexual and gender-based violence. Whether it is domestic violence, intimate partner violence, violence against children, there was no linkages in these laws. So I would like to ask all of us, and I would promise to do the same, it's to ask one member of parliament in your country to meet with you and to discuss changing this. And I'm happy to send a link to those studies. They are brilliant, We got some funding from the Swedish Red Cross for this.
Wow.
We studied the situation in Ecuador, Nepal, and Zimbabwe, and there's a global study. And I was shocked that nobody in my own parliament in Norway had thought about the risks that we now read about in the media of increased gender-based violence and intimate partner violence, for instance. So there has to be accountability for the perpetrators. There has to be police have to be trained on how to deal with this. There have to be shelters that can kick in, that can be available, and there should also be laws that men who become violent during any time, but especially during a crisis, that they should be removed from the home and not the woman and the children. So these things could be highlighted now, because now there's more attention thanks to the Me Too campaign, but also thanks to everybody understands better that a woman who's beaten up now during lockdown, it's a little bit easier for the patriarchy to understand that she might actually be innocent. Because before she's been blamed even more. So now she's blamed a little bit less because it's like a prison situation. So now we have to use the attention to the gender-based violence issues to try to push for law reform.
I want to thank the three of you for joining and for sharing. I think even if there is grim situations, I think what you have all shared is that this is also a time where things are coming up, where you said the victims are maybe believed, where it's a chance to share information, it's a chance to finally come out and be authentic, and become more aware of these issues. And I think also as women in this time, and with the men who wants to be part of it, as we say, if things has to be new, so if things are changing anyway, let's change everything. And it's a time for us to step up for new roles, like Kanta mentioned, and take leadership and step up and take the chance we have, and do that together, helping each other. So with this, I also want to thank all of you for having been part of this session today, and I look forward to staying in touch and for meeting you again at some other point as well. So thank you again, and you will hear from us soon. Okay, bye everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kristin. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you. Bye.
Everybody.